Question 1. During an audit of a multinational logistics provider's supply chain security management system, an auditee claims to have effectively assessed the likelihood and impact of potential security breaches. As the lead auditor, you are reviewing their methodology. Which of the following approaches most accurately reflects the principles of ISO 28000-2007 for evaluating the severity of potential consequences, respective of their probability? Option A. Classifying all potential security incidents as high impact to ensure a conservative approach to risk management. Option B. Quantifying the potential financial loss, operational downtime, and reputational damage associated with each identified threat scenario. Option C. Relying solely on the historical frequency of similar security incidents within the industry to determine the severity of future events. Option D. Estimating the number of personnel who might be directly affected by a security incident without considering broader organizational impacts. Correct answer is B. Quantifying the potential financial loss, operational downtime, and reputational damage associated with each identified threat scenario. Explanation. The process of assessing the likelihood and impact of security incidents within a supply chain, as mandated by ISO 28000-2007, involves a systematic evaluation of potential threats and vulnerabilities. Likelihood refers to the probability of a specific security event occurring, considering factors such as the frequency of past incidents, the presence of known vulnerabilities, the effectiveness of existing controls, and the threat landscape. Impact, conversely, quantifies the consequences of a security incident on the organization's objectives, including financial losses, reputational damage, operational disruption, legal or regulatory noncompliance, and harm to individuals. A lead auditor must therefore guide the auditee in establishing a methodology that not only identifies potential security events, but also assigns a quantifiable or qualitative measure to their probability of occurrence and the severity of their potential effects. This assessment informs the prioritization of security measures and the allocation of resources. For instance, a highly likely incident with a severe impact would necessitate immediate and robust mitigation strategies, while a low likelihood, low impact event might be managed through less intensive controls or contingency planning. The ultimate goal is to develop a risk register that accurately reflects the security posture of the supply chain, enabling informed decision-making for risk treatment. Question 2. A lead auditor is evaluating the implementation of an ISO 28000-2007 compliant supply chain security management system, SCSMS, within a multinational logistics provider. The organization has also implemented ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. The auditor observes that while the organization has documented separate procedures for quality, environmental, and security risk assessments, there is a lack of integrated risk management processes and a noticeable overlap in the data collection for each system. Which aspect of the SCSMS implementation is most likely to be considered a significant nonconformity or area for improvement in relation to the intent of ISO 28000-2007, particularly concerning the principles of integration and efficiency? Option A. The absence of a unified risk assessment methodology that considers security, quality, and environmental factors concurrently, leading to potential inefficiencies and missed interdependencies. Option B. The existence of separate documented procedures for quality, environmental, and security risk assessments, which is a common practice for specialized management systems. Option C. The organization's failure to conduct a comprehensive review of its security policy against current international security regulations, a common oversight in many SCSMS implementations. Option D. The implementation of distinct control measures for quality, environmental, and security hazards without a clear framework for prioritizing and coordinating these controls. The correct answer is A. The absence of a unified risk assessment methodology that considers security, quality, and environmental factors concurrently, leading to potential inefficiencies and missed interdependencies. Explanation. The core principle of ISO 28000-2007 is the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of a supply chain security management system, SCSMS. A lead auditor's role is to assess the conformity of an organization's SCSMS with the standards requirements. When considering the integration of an SCSMS with other management systems, such as ISO 9001, quality management, or ISO 14001, Environmental management. The auditor must evaluate how the organization has achieved synergy and avoided duplication of effort, while ensuring all ISO 28000 requirements are met. The standard emphasizes a risk-based approach, requiring organizations to identify, assess, and treat security risks throughout the supply chain. A lead auditor would look for evidence that the SCSMS is not merely a standalone document, but is embedded within the organization's overall operations and management processes. The concept of security-aware culture is paramount, meaning that security considerations are integrated into decision-making at all levels. The auditor would verify that the organization has established clear security objectives, performance indicators, and mechanisms for monitoring and measurement, all aligned with the overall business strategy and security policy. The standard also mandates the establishment of procedures for handling nonconformities and for taking corrective action to prevent recurrence, ensuring the continual improvement of the SCSMS. The auditor's assessment would focus on the effectiveness of these processes in achieving the intended security outcomes for the supply chain. Question 3. When auditing a logistics provider's adherence to ISO 28000-2007, particularly concerning the testing and exercising of their business continuity plans for supply chain security, what is the primary objective a lead auditor should focus on to ensure the organization's resilience and the effectiveness of its SCSMS? Option A. Reviewing the frequency of business continuity plan exercises conducted over the past 3 years to ensure compliance with internal policy guidelines. Option B. Confirming that a comprehensive range of simulated threat scenarios, including cyber attacks and physical theft, are documented in the exercise plan. Option C. Verifying that test results are systematically analyzed to identify deficiencies and drive documented improvements in security controls and response procedures. Option D. Ensuring that all supply chain partners are invited to participate in at least one business continuity exercise annually, regardless of their direct security responsibilities. The correct answer is C. Verifying that test results are systematically analyzed to identify deficiencies and drive documented improvements in security controls and response procedures. Explanation. The core principle of testing and exercising business continuity plans, as applied to supply chain security management under ISO 28000-2007, is to validate the effectiveness and readiness of the established security measures and response procedures. This involves simulating disruptive events that could impact the integrity, availability, or confidentiality of goods and information within the supply chain. The objective is not merely to identify procedural gaps, but critically, to assess the resilience of the security controls in place and the competency of personnel to execute the continuity plan. A key aspect is the feedback loop. The results of these tests and exercises must inform and drive improvements to the overall supply chain security management system, SCSMS. This continuous improvement cycle ensures that the SCSMS remains robust and adaptive to evolving threats and vulnerabilities. Therefore, the most crucial outcome of testing and exercising is the generation of actionable insights that directly lead to enhancements in the documented security protocols and operational procedures, thereby strengthening the supply chain's ability to withstand and recover from security incidents. This process directly supports the attainment of the organization's security objectives, as defined within the SCSMS framework. Question 4. During an audit of a global logistics firm's adherence to ISO 28000-2007, the lead auditor is reviewing the supplier selection and evaluation process for third-party warehousing and transportation providers. The firm has a policy of prioritizing suppliers based primarily on cost-effectiveness and delivery time guarantees. However, recent intelligence suggests that some regions where these suppliers operate have heightened risks of cargo theft and illicit diversion. What critical security-related criterion, often overlooked when focusing solely on commercial metrics, should the lead auditor emphasize during the evaluation of these suppliers to ensure robust supply chain security? Option A. Assessment of the supplier's financial stability and creditworthiness to ensure their long-term viability as a business partner. Option B. Verification of the supplier's established security management system, including their risk assessment methodology for identifying and mitigating supply chain vulnerabilities, and evidence of adherence to relevant national and international security regulations. Option C. Examination of the supplier's marketing materials and client testimonials to gauge their reputation for service quality and reliability. Option D. Review of the supplier's employee training programs solely focused on customer service and efficient operational procedures. The correct answer is B. Verification of the supplier's established security management system, including their risk assessment methodology for identifying and mitigating supply chain vulnerabilities, and evidence of adherence to relevant national and international security regulations. Explanation: the selection and evaluation of suppliers within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, requires a comprehensive approach that extends beyond mere commercial viability. A lead auditor must assess whether the organization has established criteria that adequately address security risks inherent in the supply chain. This involves considering factors such as the supplier's own security policies and procedures, their track record regarding security incidents, the security of their operational facilities and transportation methods, and their commitment to data protection and confidentiality. Furthermore, the auditor needs to verify that these criteria are integrated into the supplier selection process and that ongoing monitoring and reevaluation occur. For instance, if a supplier handles sensitive goods or information, their ability to implement appropriate physical security measures, background checks for personnel, and secure logistics is paramount. The auditor would look for evidence of risk assessments performed on potential suppliers, contractual clauses that mandate security compliance, and a mechanism for addressing noncompliance. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the chosen suppliers do not introduce unacceptable security vulnerabilities into the organization's supply chain. Question 5. During an audit of a multinational logistics firm's supply chain security management system, an auditor discovers that the company's background checks for warehouse personnel primarily consist of verifying current address and a basic criminal history check that only covers the last 5 years. The firm handles high-value electronics and sensitive pharmaceutical components. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007 and the potential security risks associated with the goods handled, what is the most significant deficiency in the firm's screening procedures? Option A. The omission of financial background checks for all employees, which could reveal potential motivations for illicit activities. Option B. The failure to conduct drug and alcohol screening for all warehouse personnel, irrespective of their role. Option C. The sole reliance on address verification without cross-referencing with government-issued identification documents. Option D. The limited scope of the criminal history check, failing to cover a sufficiently long period, and the lack of verification for employment history and references. The correct answer is D. The limited scope of the criminal history check, failing to cover a sufficiently long period, and the lack of verification for employment history and references. Explanation: the effectiveness of background checks and screening procedures within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, hinges on their ability to identify potential security risks associated with individuals and entities involved in the supply chain. These procedures must be proportionate to the identified risks and comply with relevant legal and regulatory frameworks, such as data protection laws and employment regulations. A robust screening process should consider multiple facets, including criminal record checks, verification of identity and employment history, and assessment of any past involvement in security breaches or fraudulent activities. The scope and depth of these checks should be tailored based on the criticality of the role or function within the supply chain and the potential impact of a security failure. For instance, personnel with direct access to high-value goods or sensitive information will require more stringent screening than those in peripheral roles. The objective is not to create an insurmountable barrier, but to establish a reasonable level of assurance regarding the trustworthiness of supply chain participants. This aligns with the standard's emphasis on risk assessment and mitigation, ensuring that the human element, often a significant vulnerability, is managed proactively. The principle of due diligence is paramount, requiring organizations to demonstrate that they have taken all reasonable steps to vet their personnel and partners. Question 6. When auditing a global logistics provider for ISO 28000-2007 compliance, a lead auditor is assessing the effectiveness of a new electronic seal system designed to detect tampering of high-value container shipments between port facilities and inland distribution centers. The system logs seal status and location data, which is transmitted to a central security operations center. What primary criterion should the auditor use to evaluate the effectiveness of this electronic seal system? Option A. The number of system alerts generated over a 6-month period, irrespective of whether these alerts correlated with actual security breaches or false positives. Option B. The cost-effectiveness of the electronic seal system compared to traditional physical seals, as outlined in the procurement justification. Option C. The documented evidence demonstrating the system's consistent and verifiable reduction of unauthorized container access incidents to a level deemed acceptable by the organization's risk appetite. Option D. The technical specifications of the electronic seals, including their encryption strength and battery life, as provided by the vendor. Correct answer is C. The documented evidence demonstrating the system's consistent and verifiable reduction of unauthorized container access incidents to a level deemed acceptable by the organization's risk appetite. Explanation: the effectiveness of a security control in a supply chain context, as evaluated by a lead auditor under ISO 28000-2007, is determined by its ability to consistently and reliably mitigate identified risks to an acceptable level. This involves assessing not just the presence of the control, but also its design, implementation, operational performance, and the evidence demonstrating its ongoing efficacy. A key aspect is understanding the control's contribution to achieving the organization's security objectives and its alignment with the overall security policy and risk management framework. For instance, if a control is designed to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive cargo, its effectiveness would be measured by the frequency of successful unauthorized access attempts after its implementation compared to the baseline, the robustness of the audit trail generated by the control, and the clarity of the procedures governing its operation and maintenance. The auditor would look for evidence of regular testing, performance monitoring, and corrective actions taken when the control's performance deviates from expected standards. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement embedded within management system standards. The measure of effectiveness is not static. It's a dynamic assessment of the control's contribution to maintaining security posture against evolving threats. Question 7. When conducting an audit of an organization that has implemented an integrated management system incorporating ISO 28000-2007, supply chain security management, ISO 9001-2015, quality management, and ISO 14001-2015, environmental management, what is the primary focus for a lead auditor regarding the interrelationship between these standards? Option A. Evaluating the documented procedures for managing common elements such as risk assessment, internal audits, and management review across all three standards to ensure consistency and absence of conflicts. Option B. Confirming that the organization has achieved separate certifications for each standard without any documented evidence of integration efforts. Option C. Assessing the financial investment made by the organization in achieving integration, irrespective of the effectiveness of the integrated management system. Option D. Verifying that the organization has separate, distinct quality, environmental, and supply chain security policies that do not overlap in their stated objectives. Correct answer is A. Evaluating the documented procedures for managing common elements such as risk assessment, internal audits, and management review across all three standards to ensure consistency and absence of conflicts. Explanation: the integration of ISO 28000-2007 with other management system standards, such as ISO 9001, quality management, and ISO 14001, environmental management, is a key aspect of effective integrated management systems. ISO 28000-2007 focuses on the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of a supply chain security management system, SCSMS. When auditing an organization that has integrated its SCSMS with other management systems, a lead auditor must assess how the common elements and requirements of these standards are managed cohesively. The high-level structure, HLS, common to newer versions of ISO management system standards, facilitates this integration by providing a standardized framework. However, even with HLS, specific clauses and their interdependencies need careful examination. For instance, Clause 4.2 of ISO 28000-2007 requires understanding the organization and its context, which would naturally involve considering factors relevant to quality and environmental aspects if those systems are also in place. Similarly, Clause 7, Competence, Training and Awareness, and Clause 8, Operation of ISO 28000-2007 will have direct parallels and potential overlaps with similar clauses in ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. An auditor's effectiveness in assessing this integration hinges on their ability to identify and evaluate the commonalities in policy, objectives, risk assessment, operational controls, and performance evaluation across the different standards, ensuring that the integrated system is not merely a collection of separate systems, but a unified approach that enhances overall organizational effectiveness and security. The most critical aspect is to verify that the integration does not lead to gaps or redundancies in the management of supply chain security, quality, and environmental impacts, and that the organization has a documented approach to managing these interrelationships. Question 8. During an audit of a global logistics provider's supply chain security management system, which is certified to ISO 28000-2007, the lead auditor is evaluating the effectiveness of internal reporting mechanisms for security deviations. The organization has a stated policy on reporting, but anecdotal evidence suggests employees are hesitant to report minor security lapses, fearing repercussions from their immediate supervisors. What is the most critical deficiency in the organization's approach to fostering a secure supply chain environment, as per ISO 28000-2007 principles? Option A. Insufficiently robust whistleblower protection policies and communication, leading to a lack of confidence in reporting security concerns. Option B. A lack of specific training modules on identifying and reporting cyber threats within the supply chain. Option C. Inadequate integration of risk assessment findings into the daily operational security protocols. Option D. Overly complex procedures for reporting minor security deviations, causing employee disengagement. The correct answer is A. Insufficiently robust whistleblower protection policies and communication, leading to a lack of confidence in reporting security concerns. Explanation. The core of a robust supply chain security management system, as outlined by ISO 28000-2007, relies on fostering an environment where individuals feel secure in reporting potential security breaches or noncompliance without fear of reprisal. This principle directly aligns with the concept of whistleblower protection. A lead auditor assessing an organization's adherence to ISO 28000-2007 would examine the effectiveness of policies and procedures designed to encourage and protect those who report concerns. Such policies should clearly define the reporting channels, the types of information that can be reported, the process for investigating reported issues, and the safeguards against retaliation. Without these protections, the likelihood of identifying and rectifying security vulnerabilities is significantly diminished, as employees may withhold critical information due to fear of negative consequences. The absence of a clear, well-communicated, and actively supported whistleblower policy directly undermines the organization's ability to maintain a proactive and resilient supply chain security posture, impacting its overall compliance and operational integrity. The lead auditor's evaluation would focus on the tangible mechanisms in place to ensure confidentiality and non-retaliation, and how these are communicated and understood throughout the organization. Question 9. During an audit of a large, multimodal freight terminal handling significant volumes of international goods, what is the primary focus for a lead auditor when assessing the effectiveness of security controls designed to protect inbound containerized cargo from unauthorized access or tampering within the terminal's operational perimeter, considering potential impacts on global supply chain integrity? Option A. Evaluation of the terminal's public relations strategy and its effectiveness in communicating security incidents to stakeholders and the media to maintain a positive public image. Option B. Verification that the terminal's documented risk assessment process adequately identifies and prioritizes threats to inbound cargo, and that implemented security measures, such as physical barriers, access control systems, and screening procedures, are proportionate to the identified risks and are effectively operationalized according to the security management system. Option C. Confirmation that the terminal has obtained all necessary permits and licenses from national and international regulatory bodies for operating a freight terminal, and that these are displayed prominently at the site. Option D. Assessment of the terminal's financial performance and profitability. As a strong financial position is often indicative of robust operational management, including security. The correct answer is B. Verification that the terminal's documented risk assessment process adequately identifies and prioritizes threats to inbound cargo, and that implemented security measures, such as physical barriers, access control systems, and screening procedures, are proportionate to the identified risks and are effectively operationalized according to the security management system. Explanation. The question probes the auditor's role in verifying the effectiveness of security measures at a major international freight terminal, specifically concerning the integrity of inbound cargo. ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes risk assessment and the implementation of appropriate controls. Clause 8.2.1 requires the organization to establish, implement, and maintain a documented process for risk assessment. Clause 8.2.2 mandates the implementation of risk treatment, which includes selecting and applying security measures. When auditing the security of transportation infrastructure, like a freight terminal, a lead auditor must assess how the organization identifies potential threats to cargo during transit and at the terminal, evaluates the likelihood and impact of these threats, and implements controls to mitigate them. This involves examining documented procedures for cargo screening, access control to storage areas, and personnel vetting, as well as verifying their actual implementation and effectiveness through observation and interviews. The auditor must also consider relevant regulatory frameworks, such as those governing international trade and customs, which often mandate specific security protocols. For instance, the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism (CTPAT) program, while voluntary, sets standards for supply chain security that are often benchmarked. An effective audit would focus on the systematic identification and evaluation of vulnerabilities in the terminal's operations that could compromise cargo, and the subsequent implementation of controls that are proportionate to the identified risks. This includes ensuring that screening technologies are calibrated and utilized correctly, that secure storage zones are properly managed, and that personnel with access to sensitive areas have undergone appropriate background checks. The auditor's objective is to determine if the organization's security management system is capable of preventing unauthorized access, tampering, or theft of cargo. Question 10. When auditing a pharmaceutical logistics provider for ISO 28000-2007 compliance, a lead auditor identifies that, while the organization has robust internal security protocols, there is a significant gap in the documented procedures for verifying the authenticity of incoming product shipments against the requirements of the U.S. Drug Supply Chain Security Act, DSCSA. The auditor needs to determine the most critical aspect of the organization's supply chain security management system that is being inadequately addressed concerning this specific regulatory requirement. Option A. The organization's process for validating the integrity of product serialization data and ensuring it aligns with DSCSA transaction data requirements. Option B. The frequency of security awareness training provided to all supply chain personnel regarding general threats to cargo. Option C. The established emergency response plan for mitigating the impact of a cyber attack on the company's inventory management system. Option D. The effectiveness of the physical security measures at the primary distribution warehouse in preventing unauthorized access to high-value pharmaceutical inventory. The correct answer is A. The organization's process for validating the integrity of product serialization data and ensuring it aligns with DSCSA transaction data requirements. Explanation. ISO 28000-2007, specifically Clause 4.2 concerning operational planning and control, requires an organization to implement and control processes that are necessary to ensure supply chain security. For organizations operating within the highly regulated pharmaceutical logistics sector, compliance with specific national and international regulations is paramount. These regulations often dictate stringent requirements for the handling, storage, and transportation of medicinal products to prevent diversion, theft, and counterfeiting. For instance, regulations like the European Union's Falsified Medicines Directive, FMD, or the U.S. Drug Supply Chain Security Act, DSCSA, impose detailed track and trace requirements, secure packaging mandates, and specific protocols for handling temperature-sensitive pharmaceuticals. A lead auditor assessing an organization in this sector must verify that the implemented security management system effectively integrates these external regulatory obligations into its operational controls. This involves examining documented procedures, training records, physical security measures at distribution centers, and the integrity of data management systems used for product traceability. The auditor must confirm that the organization's risk assessments consider regulatory noncompliance as a significant threat to supply chain security, and that mitigation strategies are in place to address these specific legal and regulatory demands, thereby ensuring the integrity and security of the pharmaceutical supply chain. Question 11. When auditing a logistics partner's implementation of vehicle security measures for high-value goods, a lead auditor for ISO 28000-2007 observes the concurrent use of GPS tracking devices and advanced tamper-evident seals on transport units. What is the primary consideration for the auditor in evaluating the effectiveness of this dual approach in mitigating unauthorized access and diversion risks? Option A. The frequency with which the transport provider conducts internal training on the proper application of seals. Option B. The number of reported security incidents involving vehicles over the past 5 years, irrespective of the security measures employed. Option C. The documented procedures for responding to GPS alerts and verifying the integrity of tamper-evident seals at critical handover points. Option D. The cost-effectiveness of the GPS tracking system compared to alternative tracking technologies. Correct answer is C. The documented procedures for responding to GPS alerts and verifying the integrity of tamper-evident seals at critical handover points. Explanation. The effectiveness of vehicle security measures in a supply chain context, as per ISO 28000-2007, hinges on their integration into a comprehensive security management system. When evaluating a transport provider's use of GPS tracking and tamper-evident seals, a lead auditor must consider how these tools contribute to the overall security objectives and risk mitigation strategies defined by the organization. GPS tracking provides real-time location data, enabling immediate response to deviations from planned routes or unexpected stops, which are critical indicators of potential theft or diversion. Tamper-evident seals, when applied correctly to vehicle doors and cargo compartments, offer a visual confirmation that the integrity of the shipment has been maintained throughout transit. The auditor's assessment should focus on the procedures for applying, verifying, and documenting the use of these seals, as well as the protocols for responding to alerts generated by the GPS system. The ultimate goal is to verify that these measures are not merely implemented, but are actively managed, reviewed, and improved to address identified supply chain security risks, thereby ensuring compliance with the standards requirements for operational controls and performance evaluation. The selection and deployment of such measures should be informed by a thorough risk assessment, aligning with the principle that security controls are proportionate to the identified threats and vulnerabilities. Question 12. When formulating an internal audit program for a robust supply chain security management system compliant with ISO 28000-2007, what fundamental principle should dictate the audit frequency for various segments of the supply chain, considering factors such as the criticality of goods, partner security postures, and the evolving threat landscape? Option A. Focusing audit frequency on the volume of goods processed through each segment, ensuring that high-throughput areas are audited more often regardless of their inherent security risks. Option B. Conducting audits primarily based on the geographical location of supply chain nodes, with greater frequency for international routes due to increased regulatory complexity and potential for disruption. Option C. Adhering to a fixed, predetermined audit schedule for all supply chain segments to ensure consistent coverage and comparability of findings across the entire operation. Option D. Prioritizing audit frequency based on a comprehensive risk assessment of each supply chain segment, with higher frequencies allocated to areas identified as having greater security vulnerabilities or potential impact. Correct answer is D. Prioritizing audit frequency based on a comprehensive risk assessment of each supply chain segment, with higher frequencies allocated to areas identified as having greater security vulnerabilities or potential impact. Explanation. The development of an internal audit program for a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, requires a systematic approach that considers the organization's context, risk appetite, and the dynamic nature of threats. The program must be established, implemented, and maintained to ensure the effectiveness of the security management system. Key elements include defining audit objectives, scope, frequency, and methodology, which are derived from an understanding of the organization's security policy, objectives, significant security risks, and the results of previous audits. The program should also account for the criticality of different supply chain segments, the regulatory environment, such as customs regulations, transportation security laws, and international trade agreements, and the performance of outsourced processes. When considering the frequency of audits for different components of the supply chain, a risk-based approach is paramount. High-risk areas, those with a greater likelihood of security breaches or significant impact on business continuity, should be audited more frequently than lower-risk areas. This risk assessment should incorporate factors like the nature of the goods transported, the geographical regions involved, the security measures of partners, and the history of incidents. Therefore, an internal audit program should be structured to prioritize these high-risk elements, ensuring that resources are allocated efficiently to verify compliance and identify opportunities for improvement in the most critical aspects of the supply chain security. The program's design must be flexible enough to adapt to changes in threat landscapes and organizational operations. Question 13. Innovatech, a global electronics assembler, relies heavily on a single-source supplier for a specialized microchip. This supplier, Quantum Components, recently suffered a catastrophic cyber attack that completely paralyzed its manufacturing and communication systems. Innovatech's documented business continuity plan for supply chain disruptions is structured to initiate response protocols after receiving a formal notification of a disruption lasting more than 72 hours. However, due to the nature of the cyber attack, Quantum Components is unable to send any form of notification, and all direct communication lines are severed. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007 for supply chain security management, what is the most significant deficiency in Innovatech's current business continuity plan in this specific scenario? Option A. The plan fails to adequately identify and qualify alternative suppliers for critical components, a fundamental requirement of ISO 28000. Option B. The plan lacks mechanisms for proactive detection and initiation of response when normal communication channels with a critical supplier are rendered inoperable by the nature of the disruption itself. Option C. The plan does not include provisions for compensating customers for delays caused by unforeseen supply chain disruptions. Option D. The plan's reliance on a 72-hour waiting period before activation is inherently too long for critical component supply disruptions. The correct answer is B. The plan lacks mechanisms for proactive detection and initiation of response when normal communication channels with a critical supplier are rendered inoperable by the nature of the disruption itself. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where a critical component supplier for an electronics manufacturer, Innovatech, experiences a severe cyber attack that halts its operations for an extended period. Innovatech's existing business continuity plan, BCP, for supply chain disruptions is designed to activate after a 72-hour disruption notification. However, the cyber attack on the supplier causes a complete shutdown, rendering communication channels with that supplier inoperative. This situation highlights a gap in Innovatech's BCP, specifically concerning the ability to detect and respond to disruptions where normal communication protocols are compromised. ISO 28000-2007 emphasizes proactive risk management and the establishment of robust security measures throughout the supply chain. A key aspect of this is ensuring that business continuity and disaster recovery plans are not only comprehensive, but also adaptable to various threat scenarios, including those that incapacitate communication systems. The cyber attack directly impacts the supplier's ability to provide goods and services, and simultaneously prevents the normal notification process from being initiated. This means that Innovatech's BCP, which relies on a timed notification trigger, will not be activated in a timely manner, or potentially at all, until the disruption is externally identified. The core issue is the reliance on a passive notification system that can be circumvented by the nature of the disruption itself. A truly effective BCP, in the context of ISO 28000, must incorporate mechanisms for detecting disruptions even when direct communication is impossible. This would involve establishing alternative monitoring methods, such as independent tracking of supplier operational status, industry-wide threat intelligence feeds, or prearranged communication protocols with secondary contacts within the affected organization. The absence of such measures means that Innovatech is vulnerable to extended periods of operational paralysis without the planned mitigation strategies being deployed. The question asks about the primary deficiency in Innovatech's BCP in this scenario. The plan's reliance on a 72-hour notification period, coupled with the fact that the disruption method, cyber attack, simultaneously disables communication, means the plan's activation trigger is effectively bypassed. Therefore, the most significant weakness is the lack of a robust mechanism to detect and initiate the BCP when direct communication channels are compromised. This proactive detection capability is crucial for minimizing the impact of unforeseen and rapidly escalating disruptions, aligning with the principles of supply chain security management. Question 14. When auditing a logistics company's adherence to ISO 28000-2007 regarding security personnel and guarding services, what critical aspect of the guarding service's effectiveness must a lead auditor primarily evaluate to ensure it aligns with the organization's identified supply chain security risks? Option A. The number of security incidents reported by the guarding service over the past fiscal year, respective of their severity or direct link to identified supply chain vulnerabilities. Option B. The documented evidence of rigorous background checks and ongoing performance evaluations for all contracted security guards, ensuring their competence and adherence to site-specific security protocols. Option C. The visual presence and uniform standards of the security guards at all access points as a deterrent to potential unauthorized entry. Option D. The cost-effectiveness of the guarding service contract, measured by the hourly rate of the security personnel compared to industry benchmarks. The correct answer is B. The documented evidence of rigorous background checks and ongoing performance evaluations for all contracted security guards, ensuring their competence and adherence to site-specific security protocols. Explanation. The core of ISO 28000-2007, particularly concerning security personnel and guarding services, revolves around ensuring that individuals performing security functions are competent, properly vetted, and operate within defined roles and responsibilities that align with the organization's security objectives and risk assessments. Clause 7.2 of the standard, competence, mandates that personnel performing tasks affecting security performance shall be competent on the basis of appropriate education, training skills, and experience. For guarding services, this translates to more than just physical presence. It requires understanding the specific threats to the supply chain, the security procedures in place, and the appropriate response protocols. A lead auditor must assess whether the organization has a system to identify the necessary competence for security personnel, provide training, or take other actions to achieve competence, and evaluate the effectiveness of those actions. This includes ensuring that background checks and vetting processes are robust, especially for personnel with access to sensitive areas or information, and that their performance is monitored and reviewed. The quality of the guarding service is directly linked to the clarity of their mandate, their training in recognizing and reporting security incidents, and their adherence to the organization's security policy and procedures. The effectiveness of a security guarding service is not merely measured by its visibility, but by its contribution to mitigating identified supply chain risks and its ability to respond appropriately to security events. Question 15. When auditing a multinational logistics provider's supply chain security management system, SCSMS, for ISO 28000-2007 compliance, a lead auditor observes that the organization's documented security policy broadly addresses general security principles, but lacks specific references to the unique threats and vulnerabilities identified within its international freight forwarding operations. Furthermore, the documented scope of the SCSMS appears to encompass all global operations, yet operational records and process descriptions suggest significant security control variations across different regional hubs, with no clear justification for these discrepancies documented. Based on these observations, what is the most critical deficiency in the SCSMS documentation that a lead auditor would need to address? Option A. The organization has not adequately documented its emergency preparedness and response procedures for significant security incidents affecting its international operations. Option B. The organization has failed to establish measurable security objectives and targets that are directly linked to the identified risks within the supply chain. Option C. The SCSMS documentation lacks a detailed risk assessment register that explicitly outlines all potential threats and vulnerabilities at each stage of the supply chain. Option D. The documented security policy does not adequately reflect the specific security risks and operational context of the organization's international freight forwarding activities, and the scope is not demonstrably supported by consistent implementation across all operational regions. The correct answer is D. The documented security policy does not adequately reflect the specific security risks and operational context of the organization's international freight forwarding activities, and the scope is not demonstrably supported by consistent implementation across all operational regions. Explanation: the core of ISO 28000-2007 is the establishment of a framework for managing security risks throughout the supply chain. Clause 4.2.1. Establishment of the SCSMS mandates that an organization shall establish, document, implement, maintain, and continually improve a supply chain security management system, SCSMS, in accordance with the requirements of this international standard. Clause 4.4.1. Documentation requires that the SCSMS documentation shall include A. A security policy, B. Objectives and targets, C. The scope of the SCSMS, D. The processes needed for the SCSMS, and E. A reference to the documented procedures and records established for the SCSMS. Furthermore, Clause 4.4.2, Control of Documents, outlines the requirements for controlling documents, ensuring they are approved, reviewed, updated, and made available where needed. The development of a comprehensive SCSMS requires the integration of security considerations into all relevant business processes, from procurement and logistics to information management and personnel. This includes identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities at various points in the supply chain and implementing appropriate controls. The effectiveness of the SCSMS is directly tied to the quality and completeness of its documentation, which serves as the blueprint for its implementation and operation. A key aspect for a lead auditor is to verify that the documented system aligns with the organization's actual practices and the requirements of the standard, ensuring that security is embedded rather than being a superficial addition. The relationship between the security policy, objectives, scope, and the operational processes is crucial for demonstrating the system's integrity and its ability to achieve its intended security outcomes. Question 16. When auditing a global logistics provider's adherence to ISO 28000-2007, a lead auditor observes that the organization tracks the number of reported cargo theft incidents per million kilometers traveled. While this metric provides a measure of transport security performance, what additional analytical approach is most critical for the auditor to assess the overall effectiveness of the supply chain security management system in preventing such incidents? Option A. Reviewing the number of security-related near misses reported by drivers and warehouse staff over the past quarter. Option B. Calculating the percentage of security awareness training modules completed by all supply chain personnel annually. Option C. Evaluating the correlation between the cargo theft incident rate and the implementation status of specific security controls identified in the risk assessment for those routes. Option D. Comparing the current cargo theft incident rate to industry averages reported by national transportation security agencies. The correct answer is C. Evaluating the correlation between the cargo theft incident rate and the implementation status of specific security controls identified in the risk assessment for those routes. Explanation: the core principle of monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation within ISO 28000-2007 is to ensure the effectiveness of the supply chain security management system, SCSMS, and to drive continual improvement. This involves establishing what needs to be monitored and measured, the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, when these activities will be performed and by whom, and when the results will be analyzed and evaluated. The standard emphasizes that the results of these activities should be used to assess the performance and effectiveness of the SCSMS. Specifically, Clause 7.4.2 Monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation requires an organization to determine what needs to be monitored and measured, the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation needed to ensure valid results, when monitoring and measurement shall be performed, and when the results from monitoring and measurement shall be analyzed and evaluated. The analysis and evaluation of performance data, such as incident rates, audit findings, and the effectiveness of security controls, directly informs decisions regarding the improvement of the SCSMS. The effectiveness of the SCSMS is intrinsically linked to its ability to achieve security objectives and prevent security incidents. Therefore, evaluating the data against these objectives and identifying trends or deviations is crucial for determining the overall effectiveness. This process is not merely about data collection, but about transforming that data into actionable insights that demonstrate whether the security measures are achieving their intended outcomes, and if the system is robust against identified threats and vulnerabilities. The selection of appropriate metrics and the rigorous analysis of the resulting data are fundamental to demonstrating conformity and effectiveness to an auditor. Question 17. During an audit of a global electronics manufacturer's supply chain security management system, a lead auditor is reviewing the process for identifying critical business functions and their interdependencies. The organization has documented its primary manufacturing, warehousing, and distribution operations. However, the auditor notes that the analysis of dependencies appears to overlook the crucial role of specialized third-party repair services for high-value components, which are essential for maintaining product availability and customer satisfaction, especially in the aftermarket phase. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007, which of the following best reflects the lead auditor's finding regarding the completeness of the organization's critical function identification? Option A. The organization has inadequately identified critical functions by failing to incorporate the security implications of outsourced, yet essential post-sale support services and their associated supply chain links. Option B. The organization's methodology is sound because it prioritizes functions that directly generate revenue and aftermarket repair services, while important, do not represent the primary revenue stream. Option C. The auditor should recommend a broader scope for the security management system to include all contractual relationships, regardless of their direct impact on initial product delivery. Option D. The organization's identification of critical functions is sufficient as it focuses on core operational activities directly related to production and primary logistics, aligning with the immediate product lifecycle. Correct answer is A. The organization has inadequately identified critical functions by failing to incorporate the security implications of outsourced, yet essential post-sale support services and their associated supply chain links. Explanation. Identifying critical business functions and their interdependencies is a cornerstone of robust supply chain security management, as mandated by ISO 28000-2007. This process involves a thorough analysis to pinpoint those activities and assets whose disruption would have the most significant negative impact on the organization's ability to meet its objectives, including the delivery of goods and services, financial stability, and reputation. A lead auditor must assess the organization's methodology for this identification. The process typically begins with understanding the organization's overall mission and objectives. Subsequently, key processes and functions that directly contribute to these objectives are mapped. For each identified function, potential threats and vulnerabilities within the supply chain are considered, along with the potential consequences of their exploitation. Dependencies between functions are crucial. For instance, a critical manufacturing process might depend on the timely delivery of specific raw materials from a single supplier, or a distribution hub might rely on a particular logistics provider. The impact of a security incident on these functions and their dependencies is then evaluated in terms of financial loss, operational downtime, reputational damage, and legal or regulatory noncompliance. The most critical functions are those that, if compromised, would lead to severe and prolonged disruption across multiple areas of the business. This systematic approach ensures that security resources and controls are prioritized effectively, focusing on the most sensitive points within the supply chain. It is not merely about listing functions, but understanding the cascading effects of their failure. Question 18. As a lead auditor for a global logistics firm, you are reviewing the development of new security procedures and work instructions for the handling of high-value electronic components. The organization has identified a moderate risk of internal theft and external diversion at consolidation hubs. Considering the principles of ISO 28000-2007 and the need for operational effectiveness. Which of the following approaches best ensures the creation of robust and compliant security documentation? Option A. Relying on existing general warehouse security protocols and updating them with basic instructions for component handling, assuming that staff familiarity with warehouse operations will mitigate most risks. Option B. Prioritizing the creation of visually appealing documents with minimal text, focusing on broad security awareness rather than specific operational controls, and assuming compliance will be achieved through regular security audits. Option C. Initiating the process with a comprehensive threat and vulnerability assessment specific to each consolidation hub, translating identified risks into detailed, step-by-step work instructions for personnel, and ensuring these are cross-referenced with relevant national and international transportation security regulations. Option D. Developing high-level security procedures based on industry best practices without specific risk assessment, and delegating the creation of detailed work instructions to individual hub managers, allowing for localized interpretation. Correct answer is C. Initiating the process with a comprehensive threat and vulnerability assessment specific to each consolidation hub, translating identified risks into detailed, step-by-step work instructions for personnel, and ensuring these are cross-referenced with relevant national and international transportation security regulations. Explanation: the development of security procedures and work instructions within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, requires a systematic approach that integrates risk management principles with operational realities. When creating these documents, a lead auditor must assess whether they effectively translate the organization's security policy and objectives into actionable steps for personnel. The process begins with identifying specific security risks and vulnerabilities relevant to each stage of the supply chain, from sourcing to delivery. These identified risks then inform the content of the procedures, ensuring that controls are designed to mitigate them. Work instructions, in turn, break down these procedures into granular, step-by-step guidance for employees performing specific tasks. A critical aspect is ensuring that these documents are clear, concise, and easily understood by the intended audience, facilitating consistent application. Furthermore, the procedures and instructions must be aligned with relevant legal and regulatory requirements, such as those pertaining to customs, transportation of goods, and data privacy, which vary by jurisdiction and industry. For instance, in international trade, compliance with regulations like the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, CTPAT, or equivalent national security programs often dictates specific security measures that must be embedded within these documents. The effectiveness of these documents is also evaluated by their ability to support the overall security culture of the organization and to be adaptable to changing threat landscapes or operational adjustments. This involves mechanisms for review, updates, and training to ensure continued relevance and compliance. Therefore, the most comprehensive approach to creating these documents involves a thorough risk assessment, clear articulation of controls, alignment with legal frameworks, and a focus on practical implementation and continuous improvement. Question 19. When conducting an audit of a global logistics provider's supply chain security management system, which aspect of document and record control, as per ISO 28000-2007, requires the most rigorous verification to ensure the integrity and effectiveness of the system's implementation across diverse operational sites and regulatory environments? Option A. The system for classifying and storing security records based on their sensitivity and retention requirements, ensuring physical and digital security. Option B. The process for training personnel on the importance of document control and the proper handling of security-related information. Option C. The procedure for identifying, approving, reviewing, and revising all security-related documents and records, ensuring version control and accessibility. Option D. The methodology for periodic review and update of the organization's security policy and objectives to reflect changes in threats and business operations. The correct answer is C. The procedure for identifying, approving, reviewing, and revising all security-related documents and records, ensuring version control and accessibility. Explanation: the core principle of document control within ISO 28000-2007 is to ensure that documents are current, accurate, and accessible to those who need them, while also maintaining obsolete versions to prevent accidental use. Clause 4. 2. 3. Control of documents mandates that an organization shall establish a documented procedure to control the documents required for the effective implementation of the security management system. This includes ensuring documents are reviewed and updated, that changes are identified, and that obsolete documents are suitably retained or disposed of. When auditing document control, a lead auditor must verify that the system addresses the entire lifecycle of a document, from creation and approval to distribution, revision, and eventual archiving or destruction. The key is to ensure that the organization can demonstrate that the correct versions are in use and that historical versions are managed in a way that prevents confusion or misuse. This is crucial for maintaining the integrity of the security management system and demonstrating compliance with the standard. An effective document control system supports consistent application of security procedures and provides evidence of conformity during audits. Question 20. When auditing a multinational logistics provider's adherence to ISO 28000-2007, a lead auditor is evaluating the methodology used to assess the likelihood and impact of a cyber attack targeting their fleet management system. The organization's assessment assigns a high likelihood to such an event due to its reliance on interconnected systems and the prevalence of sophisticated phishing campaigns targeting transportation sector employees. The impact is also rated high due to the potential for widespread operational paralysis, unauthorized cargo rerouting, and significant financial penalties under data protection regulations like the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, for any personal data compromised. Which of the following best reflects the auditor's primary concern regarding this assessment methodology from an ISO 28000-2007 perspective, considering the need for a robust and defensible risk evaluation? Option A. The methodology fails to differentiate between the impact of operational disruption and the impact of regulatory noncompliance, leading to an incomplete risk profile. Option B. The methodology adequately considers the interconnectedness of systems and regulatory compliance, providing a sound basis for risk treatment. Option C. The methodology may be overly subjective if the high likelihood and impact ratings are not supported by specific, verifiable data points or documented assumptions beyond general threat trends. Option D. The methodology prioritizes cyber threats over physical security threats, which is contrary to the holistic approach required by ISO 28000-2007. The correct answer is B. The methodology adequately considers the interconnectedness of systems and regulatory compliance, providing a sound basis for risk treatment. Explanation. To assess the likelihood and impact of security incidents within a supply chain, a lead auditor must consider various factors that influence both probability and consequence. Likelihood is determined by the frequency of similar past events, the effectiveness of existing controls, the inherent vulnerabilities of the assets and processes, and the threat landscape. For instance, a critical component transported through a region with a history of cargo theft and with weak physical security measures at transit points would have a higher likelihood of a theft incident than a similar component moved through a secure zone with robust tracking and escort services. Impact, conversely, is evaluated based on the potential disruption to business operations, financial losses, including direct costs, lost revenue and reputational damage, harm to people, and environmental consequences. A disruption to a just-in-time manufacturing process, for example, could have a far greater financial impact than delay in non-critical spare parts. The lead auditor's role is to systematically evaluate these elements, often using qualitative scales, e.g., low, medium, high, or quantitative measures where data is available, to prioritize risks and determine the adequacy of the organization's risk management framework, as per ISO 28000-2007. The process involves understanding the specific context of the supply chain, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then analyzing the potential consequences if a threat exploits a vulnerability. This analysis informs the selection and implementation of appropriate security measures. Question 21. As a lead auditor assessing an organization's adherence to ISO 28000-2007, how would you evaluate the effectiveness of their established mechanisms for fostering a culture of continual improvement in supply chain security, particularly in relation to integrating lessons learned from both minor operational deviations and significant security incidents? Option A. By examining documented evidence of a systematic process for analyzing all security-related feedback, including near misses and minor operational deviations, to identify trends and implement data-driven corrective and preventive actions that are verified for their long-term effectiveness. Option B. By assessing the number of security awareness training sessions conducted annually, believing that increased training directly correlates with a proactive improvement culture. Option C. By verifying that the organization has a formal documented procedure for reporting security incidents, without necessarily scrutinizing the subsequent analysis and implementation of learnings from those incidents. Option D. By reviewing the frequency of management review meeting where security performance is discussed, assuming that regular discussions automatically translate into a culture of improvement. The correct answer is A. By examining documented evidence of a systematic process for analyzing all security-related feedback, including near misses and minor operational deviations, to identify trends and implement data-driven corrective and preventive actions that are verified for their long-term effectiveness. Explanation. The core of promoting a culture of continual improvement within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, lies in establishing mechanisms that actively seek, analyze, and act upon feedback and performance data. This involves more than just identifying nonconformities. It requires a proactive approach to learning from all operational aspects, including successes and near misses. The standard emphasizes the importance of management review, internal audits, and performance monitoring as key inputs to this process. When considering how a lead auditor assesses this, they would look for evidence of systematic data collection, root cause analysis of identified issues, whether they are minor deviations or significant security breaches, and the implementation of corrective and preventive actions that are verified for effectiveness. Furthermore, the organization's commitment to fostering an environment where employees at all levels feel empowered to report potential improvements or security vulnerabilities without fear of reprisal is crucial. This includes providing resources and training to support improvement initiatives. The auditor would therefore evaluate the integration of lessons learned from incidents, audit findings, and stakeholder feedback into revised procedures, security plans, and employee awareness programs. The effectiveness of this culture is demonstrated when the organization can show a demonstrable trend of reduced security risks, enhanced operational resilience, and a proactive adaptation to evolving threats, rather than a reactive response to failures. This continuous feedback loop, driven by data and a commitment to learning, is the hallmark of a mature security culture. Question 22. A lead auditor is reviewing the risk treatment plan for a multinational logistics company transporting high-value electronic components. The identified risk is the potential for unauthorized access to sensitive cargo during transit, leading to theft or tampering. The company has proposed several treatment options. Which of the following proposed treatments would be considered the most effective and directly applicable to mitigating this specific risk in transit, demonstrating a thorough understanding of ISO 28000-2007 principles for risk treatment? Option A. Comprehensive enhanced driver training programs focused on situational awareness and reporting suspicious activities. Option B. Development of dynamic route optimization software to minimize transit times and exposure to high-risk areas. Option C. Implementation of high-security, tamper-evident seals with unique serial numbers for all cargo containers. Option D. Mandatory security awareness training for all warehouse personnel involved in loading and unloading operations. The correct answer is C. Implementation of high security, tamper-evident seals with unique serial numbers for all cargo containers. Explanation. The core of developing a risk treatment plan within the ISO 28000-2007 framework involves selecting appropriate measures to mitigate identified supply chain security risks. This selection process is guided by a hierarchical approach, prioritizing measures that are effective, feasible, and aligned with the organization's security objectives and risk appetite. When considering a risk of unauthorized access to sensitive cargo during transit, a lead auditor would evaluate the proposed treatments against established security principles. The most effective treatment would directly address the root cause of the vulnerability, which in this case is the potential for unauthorized physical entry. Implementing a tamper-evident seal with unique serial numbers provides a verifiable indicator of any attempted or successful breach. This measure offers a high degree of assurance regarding the integrity of the cargo throughout its journey. Other options, while potentially contributing to security, do not offer the same level of direct, verifiable protection against unauthorized access. For instance, enhanced driver training is important but does not physically prevent access. Route optimization can reduce exposure but doesn't secure the cargo itself. Security awareness training for warehouse staff addresses a different part of the supply chain and a different set of risks. Therefore, a tamper-evident seal with unique serial numbers is the most robust and direct risk treatment for unauthorized access to sensitive cargo in transit. Question 23. During an audit of a global logistics provider's supply chain security management system, you discover that their initial security risk assessment was conducted 2 years ago and has not been updated. The company has since expanded its operations into several new high-risk regions and experienced a significant increase in cargo theft incidents, which were not adequately foreseen in the original assessment. According to the principles and requirements of ISO 28000-2007, what is the most critical deficiency in the organization's approach to security risk management? Option A. Failure to conduct a periodic review and update of the security risk assessment to reflect changes in operational scope and emerging threat intelligence. Option B. Neglecting to conduct a formal cost-benefit analysis for each identified security control measure. Option C. Insufficient documentation of the risk treatment plans derived from the initial risk assessment. Option D. Over-reliance on external security consultants for risk assessment rather than developing in-house expertise. The correct answer is A. Failure to conduct a periodic review and update of the security risk assessment to reflect changes in operational scope and emerging threat intelligence. Explanation. The core of ISO 28000-2007 is the systematic identification, analysis, evaluation, and treatment of security risks within a supply chain. A security risk assessment is a foundational step in this process. It involves understanding the potential threats to the supply chain, the vulnerabilities that could be exploited, and the potential consequences if an incident occurs. The objective is not just to list risks, but to understand their likelihood and impact to prioritize mitigation efforts. This aligns with the Plan Do Check Act (PDCA) cycle inherent in management systems. During the plan phase, the risk assessment informs the development of the security management system. The do phase involves implementing controls. The check phase involves monitoring and measuring the effectiveness of these controls, which may necessitate reassessing risks. The act phase involves making improvements based on the monitoring and review. Therefore, the ongoing nature of risk assessment is crucial for maintaining an effective security posture. It's not a one-time activity, but a continuous process that adapts to changing threat landscapes and operational conditions. Standard emphasizes that the organization must determine risks and opportunities related to its supply chain security objectives and the means of achieving them. This includes considering internal and external factors, as well as the needs and expectations of interested parties. The output of the risk assessment directly influences the selection and implementation of security controls, resource allocation, and the overall strategic direction of the security program. Question 24. During an audit of a global logistics provider's ISO 28000-2007 compliant supply chain security management system, the lead auditor is assessing the effectiveness of controls designed to prevent unauthorized access to high-value cargo during intermediate storage. The provider utilizes a combination of physical access controls, surveillance systems, and personnel screening. Analysis of audit findings reveals that, while these controls are documented and appear to be in place, there have been 2 reported instances of minor inventory discrepancies in the past year, attributed by the provider to potential human error during inventory counts rather than security breaches. The auditor needs to determine if the current control set is truly effective in mitigating the risk of unauthorized access. Which of the following approaches would best allow the auditor to assess the effectiveness of the implemented security controls in this scenario? Option A. Conducting interviews with warehouse staff to gauge their general awareness of security protocols and their perception of the effectiveness of the existing security measures. Option B. Examining the provider's insurance policies and claims history related to cargo loss or damage to infer the overall security performance of the storage facilities. Option C. Reviewing the documented procedures for physical access, surveillance monitoring, and personnel screening, and cross-referencing these with the reported inventory discrepancies to identify any procedural gaps or inconsistencies in application. Option D. Verifying that the surveillance systems are operational and that access logs are being maintained, without delving into the specific content of the surveillance footage or the details of personnel screening outcomes. The correct answer is C. Reviewing the documented procedures for physical access, surveillance monitoring, and personnel screening, and cross-referencing these with the reported inventory discrepancies to identify any procedural gaps or inconsistencies in application. Explanation: the effectiveness of a supply chain security management system, as per ISO 28000-2007, is evaluated by assessing how well its implemented controls mitigate identified risks and achieve stated security objectives. A lead auditor must look beyond the mere existence of controls to their actual performance and impact. This involves verifying that controls are not only documented, but also consistently applied, monitored, and reviewed. For instance, if a risk assessment identified the vulnerability of high-value goods to internal theft during transit, a control might be the use of tamper-evident seals and GPS tracking. Evaluating the effectiveness would require the auditor to examine records of seal integrity checks at various transit points, review GPS logs for any deviations from planned routes or unauthorized stops, and analyze incident reports related to seal breaches or cargo discrepancies. The auditor would also consider whether the frequency of these checks and the technology used are adequate to deter or detect such incidents. Furthermore, the system's ability to adapt to evolving threats, as demonstrated by periodic reviews and updates to security procedures based on new intelligence or past incidents, is a key indicator of effectiveness. The concept of performance measurement within the standard is crucial here, requiring the organization to define what constitutes effective performance for each control, and then gather data to demonstrate it. This data-driven approach allows for objective assessment and continuous improvement of the security posture. Question 25. During an audit of a global logistics provider's supply chain security management system, you are reviewing the results of a recent tabletop exercise simulating a sudden, prolonged closure of a key transshipment hub due to unexpected geopolitical unrest. The exercise involved key personnel from operations, security, and crisis management. Which of the following outcomes from this exercise would be considered the most significant finding for a lead auditor to report concerning the effectiveness of the business continuity plan testing, as per ISO 28000-2007 requirements? Option A. Confirmation that all designated personnel attended the tabletop exercise and actively participated in the simulated scenario discussions. Option B. The identification of a need for additional training on basic emergency response procedures for a small subset of operational staff not directly involved in the exercise. Option C. A comprehensive list of specific, documented recommendations for enhancing communication protocols with international partners and identifying alternative routing strategies, directly linked to gaps identified during the exercise. Option D. A general observation that the existing business continuity plan provided a reasonable framework for responding to the simulated event. Correct answer is C. A comprehensive list of specific, documented recommendations for enhancing communication protocols with international partners and identifying alternative routing strategies, directly linked to gaps identified during the exercise. Explanation: the core principle of testing and exercising business continuity plans within the ISO 28000 framework is to validate their effectiveness, identify gaps, and ensure the organization's resilience against disruptive events that could impact the supply chain. Clause 8.3 of ISO 28000-2007 specifically addresses the need for testing and exercising the implemented measures. The objective is not merely to perform an exercise, but to gather actionable feedback that leads to improvements. When evaluating the results of a tabletop exercise designed to simulate a port closure due to severe weather, a lead auditor must focus on how well the exercise confirmed the adequacy of the contingency plans, the clarity of roles and responsibilities during the simulated crisis, the effectiveness of communication protocols with key stakeholders, e.g., carriers, customs, clients, and the identification of any resource deficiencies or procedural ambiguities. The most critical outcome of such an exercise, from an auditing perspective, is the documented identification of specific, actionable improvements to the business continuity plan and its supporting procedures, which then form the basis for corrective actions and future plan enhancements. Simply confirming that personnel participated or that a plan exists is insufficient. The exercise must yield insights that directly contribute to a more robust and responsive security posture for the supply chain. Question 26. When auditing a global logistics firm that handles high-value electronics and is certified under ISO 28000-2007 and also seeks CTPAT, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, validation for its North American operations, what is the most critical aspect for the lead auditor to verify regarding the firm's internal audit program? Option A. The extent to which internal audit reports explicitly cross-reference specific CTPAT security requirements and provide evidence of conformity or nonconformity with those requirements. Option B. The frequency of internal audits conducted across all company facilities, irrespective of their direct involvement in international shipments. Option C. The number of internal auditors employed by the firm, ensuring adequate staffing for comprehensive coverage. Option D. The cost-effectiveness of the internal audit process in relation to the overall budget allocated for security compliance initiatives. The correct answer is A. The extent to which internal audit reports explicitly cross-reference specific CTPAT security requirements and provide evidence of conformity or nonconformity with those requirements. Explanation. The core of ISO 28000-2007 is establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving a supply chain security management system, SCSMS. Clause 4. 3. 1. General requirements. Mandates that an organization shall establish, document, implement, maintain, and continually improve an SCSMS in accordance with the requirements of this international standard, and shall determine the scope of the SCSMS. Clause 4. 3. 2. Security policy requires the organization to establish a security policy that is appropriate to the purpose of the organization and the nature of its supply chain operations, and includes a commitment to comply with applicable legal and other requirements and a commitment to continual improvement of the SCSMS. Clause 4. 4. 1. Planning General emphasizes that the organization shall plan to implement the requirements of the SCSMS and to manage its risks. This includes identifying security risks and opportunities related to the supply chain and planning actions to address them. Specifically, for a logistics provider handling international shipments subject to regulations like the U.S. Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism (CTPAT) or the EU's Authorized Economic Operator (EO) program, the SCSMS must integrate these external compliance obligations. A lead auditor's role is to verify this integration. The question probes the auditor's understanding of how external regulatory compliance, such as CTPAT validation requirements, should be reflected within the internal SCSMS audit process. The auditor must ensure that the internal audits specifically check if the organization's established security procedures align with and demonstrate compliance with these external mandates, which are critical for maintaining operational legitimacy and facilitating trade. Therefore, the most effective approach for the auditor is to focus on the direct correlation between internal audit findings and the specific requirements of these recognized security programs, ensuring that the SCSMS audit actively validates adherence to these external standards. Question 27. When auditing a multinational corporation's ISO 28000-2007 compliant supply chain security management system, what is the most critical indicator of effective communication and coordination with diverse stakeholders, including overseas suppliers operating under different national security regulations and end customers who rely on the integrity of the delivered goods? Option A. The presence of a dedicated supply chain security liaison officer responsible for managing all external communications, irrespective of the proactive engagement with other departments or the systematic collection of stakeholder feedback. Option B. The establishment of a formal grievance procedure for reporting security breaches, without a corresponding proactive strategy for informing stakeholders about potential risks or ongoing security measures implemented throughout the supply chain. Option C. The documented existence of a stakeholder communication plan that specifies the frequency and channels for disseminating security updates and incident reports to all identified internal and external parties, with evidence of regular review and adaptation based on feedback. Option D. the successful completion of all scheduled security awareness training sessions for internal personnel, demonstrating a focus on internal communication without explicit consideration for external stakeholder engagement strategies. The correct answer is C. The documented existence of a stakeholder communication plan that specifies the frequency and channels for disseminating security updates and incident reports to all identified internal and external parties, with evidence of regular review and adaptation based on feedback. Explanation: the core of effective stakeholder communication in supply chain security management, as outlined by ISO 28000:2007, involves establishing clear, consistent, and relevant dialogue. A lead auditor must assess how an organization ensures that all parties with a vested interest in the supply chain security are appropriately informed and engaged. This includes not only internal departments like logistics, procurement, and legal, but also external entities such as suppliers, customers, regulatory bodies, and even end users. The auditor's focus should be on the processes for identifying these stakeholders, understanding their security-related needs and expectations, and developing communication strategies that address these. This involves determining the frequency, format, and content of communications, ensuring that security policies, risk assessments, incident reports, and mitigation plans are shared in a manner that fosters understanding and cooperation. The effectiveness of these communications is judged by their ability to facilitate coordinated security efforts, build trust, and ensure compliance with relevant security regulations and standards. A key aspect is the feedback mechanism, how the organization gathers input from stakeholders and uses it to improve its security management system. This proactive and inclusive approach is fundamental to building a resilient and secure supply chain, moving beyond mere information dissemination to genuine engagement. Question 28. When auditing a company's supply chain security management system, an auditor is reviewing the effectiveness of its employee security awareness training program, considering the principles of ISO 28000:2007 and the need to mitigate various supply chain threats. What is the most crucial indicator of the program's success? Option A: the percentage of employees who successfully complete a post-training knowledge assessment quiz. Option B: the breadth of topics covered in the training materials, including general cybersecurity and workplace safety. Option C: the number of training sessions conducted annually, irrespective of participant engagement or feedback. Option D: a measurable reduction in the frequency and severity of reported security incidents across the supply chain. The correct answer is D: a measurable reduction in the frequency and severity of reported security incidents across the supply chain. Explanation: the effectiveness of a security awareness training program within a supply chain context, as per ISO 28000:2007 principles, hinges on its ability to foster a security-conscious culture and ensure compliance with established security protocols. When evaluating such a program, a lead auditor must consider how the training addresses specific threats relevant to the supply chain, such as cargo theft, insider threats, or the misuse of technology. The training should also be tailored to different roles and responsibilities within the organization and its supply chain partners, ensuring that all personnel understand their part in maintaining security. Furthermore, the program's impact should be measured through observable behaviors and a reduction in security incidents, rather than solely through attendance records or simple comprehension tests. A key aspect of an effective program is its ability to integrate security considerations into daily operations and decision-making processes, making security a shared responsibility. This involves clear communication of policies, regular reinforcement of best practices, and mechanisms for reporting security concerns without fear of reprisal. The training should also align with relevant national and international security regulations and guidelines that impact supply chain operations, such as those pertaining to the transport of sensitive goods or compliance with customs security programs. Therefore, the most critical factor in assessing the program's success is its demonstrable contribution to reducing the likelihood and impact of security breaches across the supply chain, which is best evidenced by a reduction in reported security incidents and improved compliance with security procedures. Question 29. An auditor is reviewing the effectiveness of employee security awareness training within a global logistics company that handles high-value electronics. The company's risk assessment identified specific vulnerabilities related to unauthorized access at distribution centers and the potential for diversion of goods during transit. Training materials provided to warehouse staff and drivers cover general security principles, but do not explicitly detail procedures for reporting suspicious activity at specific access points, or outline the protocols for verifying the integrity of cargo seals during transit. Which aspect of the training program will most likely be considered a deficiency by a lead auditor applying ISO 28000-2007 principles? Option A. The training content fails to directly address the specific identified risks of unauthorized access and cargo diversion within the company's operational context. Option B. The training focuses solely on physical security measures, neglecting cybersecurity aspects of the supply chain. Option C. The training program does not include a comprehensive review of international customs regulations relevant to all countries of operation. Option D. The training materials lack detailed historical data on past security incidents within the supply chain. Correct answer is A. The training content fails to directly address the specific identified risks of unauthorized access and cargo diversion within the company's operational context. Explanation. The core of ISO 28000-2007, particularly concerning employee training, is to foster a culture of security awareness that is directly linked to the organization's specific supply chain risks and security policy. Clause 7.2.2. Competence, training, and awareness mandates that personnel whose work affects supply chain security shall be competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. Crucially, awareness training must ensure that personnel understand the relevance and importance of their activities and how they contribute to the achievement of security objectives, including the security policy. This means training should not be generic, but tailored to the identified threats and vulnerabilities within the organization's supply chain, such as cargo theft, unauthorized access, or insider threats. The effectiveness of this training is measured by its ability to influence behavior and contribute to the overall security posture. Therefore, lead auditor would assess whether the training program directly addresses the specific security risks identified in the organization's risk assessment, aligns with the stated security policy, and demonstrably enhances employee understanding of their role in mitigating those risks. This includes verifying that the training content is current, relevant to the operational context, and that its impact on security awareness and performance is evaluated. Question 30. When developing incident reporting procedures for a complex, multimodal international supply chain, what foundational element is paramount for ensuring the effectiveness and integrity of the reporting process, aligning with the intent of ISO 28000-2007 regarding security event management? Option A. Implementing a sophisticated blockchain-based ledger to immutably record every reported security event for enhanced auditability. Option B. Clearly defining the roles and responsibilities of all personnel involved in the incident reporting lifecycle, from initial detection to final disposition. Option C. Establishing a tiered system of penalties for individuals who fail to report security incidents within a specified timeframe, irrespective of the incident's severity. Option D. Mandating the use of advanced artificial intelligence algorithms to automatically detect and categorize all potential security anomalies before human reporting is initiated. The correct answer is B. Clearly defining the roles and responsibilities of all personnel involved in the incident reporting lifecycle, from initial detection to final disposition. Explanation. The establishment of effective incident reporting procedures within a supply chain security management system, as guided by ISO 28000-2007, necessitates a framework that ensures timely, accurate, and actionable information flow. Critical aspect of this is defining clear roles and responsibilities for who is authorized to report incidents, who receives these reports, and who is accountable for their investigation and resolution. This clarity prevents ambiguity and ensures that security events are not overlooked or mismanaged. Furthermore, the procedures must specify the types of incidents that warrant reporting, ranging from minor security breaches or near misses to major disruption. The method of reporting, whether through a dedicated digital platform, email, or a verbal notification system, must be accessible and understood by all relevant personnel. Crucially, the system must facilitate the capture of essential details such as the nature of the incident, location, time, individuals involved, and any immediate actions taken. The process should also include provisions for acknowledging receipt of reports and providing feedback to the reporter, fostering a culture of continuous improvement and encouraging future reporting. The objective is to create a robust mechanism that supports the identification, assessment, and mitigation of security risks throughout the supply chain, aligning with the principles of due diligence and risk management inherent in the standard.